Hello, everybody, and welcome to your favorite show. We're talking about Rasslin and Racin, brought to you by Arden's Burger Grill in Central South Carolina. Also, we want to thank Dorsey Auto Sales in Anderson, South Carolina. And I tell you what, tonight, it was so big, we're going to have to spread this out, folks. We're talking about a big show tonight. We're going over the first round of the men's tag team action. We was going to try to do the women, but with every one of these matches, we got to have some talking. We got to have some time to talk about it. So we are going to bring it to you tonight as the men's tag team action, and we can't do it without the guy. We're talking about the man with the plan. Ref Brandon, how we doing?
Absolutely amazing. How are you?
Oh, man, I am doing great, Ref. And I tell you what, let's get started with this because I tell you what, we've got just huge matches, and we already knew this was tough because, folks, we know that there's names of tag teams that everybody wanted in this that they said we forgot or we didn't give respect to. Folks, this is just our first attempt at this, and we went by a lot of different things, and this is what we came up with. So, Ref Brandon, how we feeling on this tag team bracket that we made?
I feel pretty good about it. I think it's going to be fantastic, and we probably are going to agree on the majority of it. But, it's hard because if you ask, like if you have an old tag team and a new tag team, facing off against each other, if you ask an old school wrestling fan, who would win that match, they're going to pick the old school wrestling team. If you ask a new school wrestling fan, they're going to pick the new school wrestling tag team because that's what they prefer. Not many of them look at it from a booking logical point of view. They look at it from fandom. And if you like the old wrestling better, you're going to pick the old ones. If you like the new wrestling better, you're going to pick the new ones. But when I was going through it, I wasn't looking at who wrestles who down the line. I was just strictly looking at it as, hey, if these two tag teams faced off against each other, who do I think would win? And that's who I picked. And that's how I done it. But you and I probably are going to agree on the majority of it. But there's probably going to be a couple that we're going to disagree on. But, hey, that's good. You don't want to agree on everything. That's boring podcast talk there.
Exactly. All right, Ref Brandon. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's get started with bracket number one. Bracket number one had the Usos versus the Freebirds. And I tell you what, this is a great matchup. And, folks, the Freebirds were represented by Terry Gordy and Michael Hayes in this match. Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. I messed up. I'm looking at the wrong thing. It's the Usos versus the Fantastics. Bobby Fulton and Tommy Rogers. What was your thoughts on this one, Ref?
Well, I thought it was two fantastic, fast-paced tag teams, but I just looked at it as from the point of view of, to me, the Fantastics back in the day were really, really, really popular, and people would buy tickets to shows to watch the Fantastics, whereas the Usos, maybe now as solo guys, maybe so, but when they were a tag team, they were on the card and they were good, but you didn't go to a show for the Usos. So for that reason, I picked the Fantastics.
All right. In this particular match, I had picked the Usos just based on how long they've been together and some of the moves. I mean, granted, 50% of their moves is the super kick, but I really do think the Usos just have the conditioning to outdo the Fantastics. And we put this through a simulation, and Ref Brandon, the Usos came out on top. What's your thoughts?
See, I would probably figure if you try the computer, it's going to pick the Usos because the computer is going to know more about them because they're the modern day tag team. So I get it, but I personally would have gone with the Fantastics.
All right. The next match to find out who takes on the Usos, we're talking about the Hurt Syndicate versus Harlem Heat. Woo, this is one heck of a match that we looked at. And we want to say hi to Mentor. Tonight, I had the Hurt Syndicate taking on Harlem Heat, and I had the Hurt Syndicate winning this. And this Hurt Syndicate, of course, Bobby Lashley and Shelton Benjamin.
Yeah, you look at it from a perspective of if you take prime Harlem Heat, they had Sensational Sherry, and of course the Hurt Business or Hurt Syndicate, whatever you want to call them, they had MVP. So both of them had the outside person to kind of help them win. So neither one of them get an advantage on that. It's kind of even on that. So you have to look at in-ring ability, and you've got four guys that were good singles wrestlers, and you had four guys that made for two phenomenal tag teams. So it's a hard call, but I would go with the Hurt Business only because I'm a huge fan of Bobby Lashley. To me, he's always been one of the, not underrated, but I'd say underutilized, underused talents, because for the majority of his career, he was a mid-card guy, and I've always thought he was a main event guy.
Yep, and not only that, I think Lashley meets up pretty good with Harlem Heat. So does Shelton Benjamin. Shelton Benjamin, I think, against Booker T makes better sense. And then I just in Bubba Ray, Ray, I think would and Bobby Lashley would be one heck of a heavyweight type meet. But I just had the Hurt Syndicate getting this match. So next week we will have the Usos versus the Hurt Syndicate. Well, not next week, the following week, because next week we'll be going over the women's division. So that was a great that bracket. I tell you, this bracket, right? Well, actually, every bracket, but I mean, those were to start off, Riff. Those were two big matches right there.
Yeah, they are. Like we said before we started this, you hate to do this because when you've got 32 great tag teams, you hate to see anybody lose, but somebody has to lose. We're not handing out trophies to everybody. So somebody has to lose, but you hate to see, anybody lose because we didn't put any flunkies in the tag team division. So they're all good tag teams. So they're all deserving of advancing, and they're all deserving of winning the whole thing, but you just can't do that.
Exactly. All right, let's go on to our next set of matches. And we have the number 2 seed Steiner Brothers taking on Rick Rude and Manny Fernandez. And folks, if you don't know about Rick Rude and Manny Fernandez, they were a big-time tag team back in the 80s. They were World Tag Team Champions. They had wins over the Road Warriors, over the Powers of Pain, over the Rock and Roll Express. You name it, they beat them all. And I tell you what, in this match, it was hard-hitting according to what we ran it through. And, of course, coming out, the Steiner Brothers. Who did you have, Riff?
I had the Steiner Brothers only because even though I think Rick Rude and Manny Fernandez were probably an underrated tag team, they still weren't together near as long as the Steiner Brothers, and I just thought the experience of Rick and Scott of the tag team would give them the advantage, so I picked the Steiner Brothers just for that reason.
Yep, and I agree with you. The Steiner Brothers, I tell you what, they were just physical, brutal, and they would just whoop your butt in the ring. And no apologies, they took on some of the biggest and baddest, the Road Warriors, Sting and Luger, the Horsemen, you name it, they did it. Doom, and I had Steiner Brothers coming out on this one. All right, well, we both agree on that one. Let's go to our next match to see who will take on the Steiner Brothers. We got FTR in AEW, or they was also in WWE. They take on the Hart Foundation, and the Hart Foundation is Bret Hart and Jim the Anvil Neidhart. Now, we also had versions where it had Owen Hart in it, but this particular version needs to be Bret Hart versus Jim the Anvil Neidhart versus FTR. If we're going to have the match of the century, I think these two teams would give us a 1 hour brutal, just technical match, but I had the Hart Foundation coming out on top, Ref.
You said that, it made me think, Jay. That's something I wish we had more of today. Back in the day, you had guys like Ric Flair and Sting, for example, that would have like 60-minute Iron Man matches. Bret Hart, Stone Cold Iron Man match one time. That's something you don't see anymore as an Iron Man match. We need to bring those back. But I picked the Hart Foundation just like you did, only because I I thought, the Hart Foundation aren't going to be alone, whereas FT aren't going to be alone. And the Hart Foundation, as a faction, they're going to make sure that their group gets the win. So I picked the Hart Foundation.
All right. So we both have that. And give me just a second, folks. I'm sharing this out. We had some people that are asking about it. So we are sharing it out. All right. Let's get to our next match. We go to our next bracket, but before I do that, the Steiner brothers will now be taking on the Hart Foundation. Boy, ref, this sounds like one heck of a match starting next in 2 weeks.
Yeah, it does. And I tell you, that's going to be another hard to call because both teams were more than experienced, but at the same time, both teams are also great tag teams. But then the Hart Foundation had the advantage because they're going to have the help on the outside, whereas the Steiner brothers, were alone. But Rick and Scott were good enough to where they could sometimes overcome the outside interference. That's going to be hard to call.
Well, Rick and Scott Steiner also had women on several different occasions. They had Missy Hyatt. We didn't add a manager to them, but, they did have times when they had someone that could also do the interference for them too. All right, let's go to bracket number 2. And boy, this was another one that was tough. Match 1, ref, the Midnight Express versus the Russians, Ivan Koloff and Nikita Koloff.
The only reason why I picked Midnight Express is kind of like with Hart Foundation. You got Jim Cornette on the outside almost, the entire time they were a tag team. And Jim Cornette's going to make sure he's going to have his team win by any means necessary. So I went with Midnight Express only for that reason.
I agree. Even though Nikita Koloff is the big boy in the match, I think when it comes down to it, I think the Midnight Express get the double team on Ivan Koloff. Cornette probably nails Nikita with the tennis racket. So I really think, that particular match is definitely worth watching. I think it happened several times. I watched a couple of matches where they actually fought each other. Of course, one of them was with Crusher Khrushchev as part of the Russian team, but we cannot use Khrushchev because he is part of Demolition. One thing that had to happen in this particular thing is that you could not be in 2 different tag teams in the thing, but it had to be a singles guy. So or not a singles guy, you had to be in it just one time. You couldn't be in it twice. All right. Next thing we have, ref, we had the Midnight Express going on to beat the Russians. So now we go to the next match. We have APA versus the British Bulldogs, ref.
Yeah, another great match. If it, would be able to happen. You're talking about 4 brutal guys who are always in the ring just to hurt somebody. But I went with the APA only because, in my personal opinion, if those 2 teams were having a match, I think APA is a little bit better as a tag team, but I could see that match going either way.
Yeah, I agree with you. I actually went back, and the only thing I could find was when Bulldog and Ron Simmons fought each other one time. Bulldog got the win, and it was not easy, of course. There was a little interference, but it wasn't what cost Simmons the match. But based on what I could see, and based on votes and everything else, and people telling me what they thought, we got the British Bulldogs getting the win in this match over APA. All right, so that leads us to next in 2 weeks. We'll have the Midnight Express versus the Bulldogs. What's your thoughts on that one, ref?
I think that would be a fantastic match. And you look at these, bracket these matches, and it makes you kind of angry because there's some of these matches where you're like, you know what? I wish that match had actually happened because I'd like to watch that match.
I know some of these matches are just unreal. Speaking of unreal and matches we would love to see, the next one could have happened, but it never did because WWE lost its mind and didn't let it happen. Folks, we're talking about the New Day, versus the Lucha Brothers. Ref Brandon, this looks like one heck of a match. The New Day was represented by Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods for the simple fact that based on what the Lucha Brothers are as far as speed and everything like that, it was a better matchup than to have Big E in there. What's your thoughts on this one? Hey, you're breaking up, Ref. Yeah, you're breaking up. Ref, you're still breaking up. We got clear. I got 100% signal. You there? Folks, give me just 1 second. We're going to get Ref Brandon back. We're having a couple technical difficulties, so I do apologize for that. We're going to try to get him back in. There is a storm in the area. Maybe that had something to do with it. So hopefully we got Ref Brandon coming back on here.
Yeah, I'm back.
All right, now we can hear you. All we could hear was
Okay, I don't know what happened. It's funny. I was in the same spot, and all of a sudden you said I was going out, and my phone said I still had full service. I don't know what happened.
Yes, same here.
I was looking at it from the perspective of you had pretty much two modern day tag teams, so it wasn't like it was old school versus new school. But I just thought about the popularity and the love of masked luchadors and masked wrestlers. So I just thought about, from a booking perspective, as popular as the Lucha Brothers were, it made sense for them to win. But I could see people picking the New Day because there really is no loser in this match.
No,
but I'd go with the Lucha Brothers only because of their popularity.
I agree, and not to say that the New Day wasn't popular, because they were very popular. I mean, Bootios actually came out as a cereal. They did a lot of things for WWE on a marketing type thing, and that's like we said, folks. This was hard. I mean, it's not like we just sat there and went, "Oh, you know what? I like the Lucha Brothers. The heck with the New Day." Man, we both like both, and the Lucha Brothers came out in the win. And sometimes it's not who we want to win. It's based on what we think would happen if somebody was the real booker. Also, we went through votes from people. We also went through Chat GPT. We went through a lot of different things to figure out who would win in this if there was a booker, which is, very hard because this tournament's crazy. But this is just, folks, this is just our opinion. So please do not have a conniption, Cal. Ref Brandon didn't, sit there and go, well, you know what? I like this team, to the heck with you. We didn't do that. We based it on a lot of different things, and you'll find out it was close. All right, Ref, and then the final match, which I'm sure Ref is glad is over with. The Young Bucks taking on Demolition, and this match actually did not last long. Demolition won this match, Ref.
I started to pick Demolition only because anybody faces the Young Bucks, I'm picking that team. But then I also thought about it, logically, and I realized that the Young Bucks, were a tag team for a long time and they're still together. But to me, Demolition is one of the most popular tag teams and best tag teams of all time. So I just couldn't see any way the Young Bucks beat Demolition.
Yep, and based on the thing that I did, the generator, this match lasted all of 4 minutes. So next week we have, or not next week, I keep getting that mixed up. 2 weeks from now, Ref, Lucha Brothers versus Demolition. Now that is going to be fun to try to figure out.
And that would be a fun match to watch as well. Can you imagine the old school, slow it down, technical wrestling of Demolition against the fast-paced luchador style of the Lucha Brothers? That'd be a fun match to watch.
Oh, yes, it would. And that's the whole thing about this. It's just going back and watching some of these great teams would be so much fun to watch, say, the New Day versus Manny Fernandez and Rick Rude, the Rock and Roll Express versus the Hardys. I mean, I'm sure we could probably get the Express now versus the Hardys because both are still wrestling, but it would not be what we would want us to be, which was both in their prime.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Now we go over to bracket 3, where the number 1 seed, the Road Warriors, taking on the Von Erichs, Kerry Von Erich, and David Von Erich. And this match did not last long. The Road Warriors got the win, Riff.
Yeah, and that's a hard call, but I went with the Road Warriors only because, to me, they were the better actual tag team, whereas the Von Erichs were more like a faction. There were so many of them, whereas Animal and Hawk were just strictly a tag team. So I think when it comes down to just tag team wrestling, I go with Animal and Hawk.
There you go, folks. And then the team that will face them, we have the Four Horsemen versus the Outsiders. The Four Horsemen were represented by Barry Windham and Arn Anderson, and they took on Kevin Nash and Scott Hall. The Outsiders get the win and go on to face the Road Warriors.
That was a hard call for me. I ended up, in the end, going with the Four Horsemen, but I could see the Outsiders, winning as well because of the size of, Scott Hall and Kevin Nash back in the day. But my old school mentality kicked in on that one. I was like, you know what? The Horsemen were an older tag team. And back in the days, there was more in-ring technical wrestling. So I'll go with the Horsemen. But I have no issue with the Outsiders winning the match.
Yep. And what's your thoughts about now the Outsiders versus the Road Warriors? And that's like a dream tag team match.
Yeah, that's another match that I would absolutely love to see because you had 4 huge guys, and it wasn't like it'd be the Lucha Brothers and Demolition where you got technical wrestling versus, high-flying wrestling. It's 4 guys that pretty much all wrestled and all moved the same way. So that's a hard call on that one.
Yep, and the only match that I could find was actually Scott Hall and Kurt Hennig when they were in AWA taking on the Road Warriors. And, of course, the Road Warriors won that match. But, of course, Hennig is not Kevin Nash. So I think Kevin Nash would be the reason why the match is going to be a lot better this time around than it was with Kurt Hennig and Scott Hall. That's taking nothing away from Kurt Hennig, folks. Mr. Perfect was exactly what they called him, the perfect professional wrestler. But back then, it was a little different with him and Scott Hall versus the Road Warriors. All right.
Yeah, they were really young back in those days, too. Really young.
Yep, AWA days. That's back in 82, 83. Yep. All right, now we go on to the next bracket. It's going to be the Hardys versus the Rockers. The Midnight Rockers. It's Marty Jannetty and Shawn Michaels. Now, folks, this is before Shawn Michaels became the Heartbreak Kid. And they take on the Hardys. And this match, Ref, we had the Hardys getting the win. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I picked the Hardys only because, the Hardys have been a tag team for 100 years and they're still together. Whereas even though the Rockers broke in as a tag team, I think as soon as they started, they both had aspirations of, splitting off and, becoming singles wrestlers. Neither one of them mindset was, hey, we're going to be a long-lasting great tag team. Both of them's thought process was, hey, I'm going to prove myself and I'm going to be a singles wrestler. So I don't think the Rockers would work together as a tag team. So that's why I picked the Hardy Boys.
All right. And they will take on the winner of the New Age Outlaws versus the Freebirds. And the Freebirds will be represented by Michael Hayes and Terry Gordy. That's right. Buddy Rogers and Jimmy Jam Garvin was not used in this tag team simulation. And because of that, the winners, folks, are the Freebirds. Terry Gordy and Michael Hayes got the win over the New Age Outlaws. What's your thoughts on that one, Riff?
And I actually agree with everybody on that one because, to me, I would pick the Freebirds only because the Freebirds, even though they were kind of a faction because there was more than 2 of them, they worked as a tag team and they worked together for a long time, whereas, the Outlaws, yeah, they were together for a while, but it was more like a comedy faction than actual wrestling faction. So I picked the Freemakers.
Yep. Terry Gordy, if you didn't ever see Terry Gordy before he passed away, go back and watch some classic wrestling of him and Michael Hayes. Buddy Rogers was more of a in the corner type person. He did a lot of the 6-man tags with them, but most of their wrestling was either Michael Hayes and Terry Gordy or Michael Hayes and Jimmy Jam Garvin, which of course was more of a WCW feel. I did not have Jimmy Jam Garvin in this particular simulation for the simple fact of who they was facing. They had, of course, going against the New Age Outlaws. Badass Billy Gunn was very instrumental in this match. Had a chance to get several wins over Michael Hayes, but I just think when it was all said and done, Terry Gordy did that running power slam that he did, and that was the end of Road Dogg.
So we agree on that one.
All right. Now let's go to bracket number 4. Folks, we're almost done here. We got the Rock and Roll Express, Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson taking on the Briscoe brothers. Oh boy, this match lasted 15 minutes. The Rock and Roll Express with the double drop kick got the win.
Yeah, I picked the Rock and Roll Express. I didn't use any kind of computer stuff on mine. I just sat down and thought, hey, if these two guys or two tag teams wrestled, who would win? And the Rock and Roll Express were so popular that from a booking perspective, if I'm going to have a tag team that's going to advance just to keep the fans coming back to watch, it's going to be the Rock and Roll Express. They were popular and still are for 50 years almost.
Yeah, it's crazy. And, there was a reason why we put them as a number 1 seed. Not because they're WWE Hall of Famers, because they really didn't wrestle much in the WWE. It was more of a WCW NWA time, and now Ricky and his son, Kerry, are actually wrestling. Though Kerry's now by himself in NWA, it was more of Ricky and Robert, and I tell you what, great tag team. Just the things they did, they were trendsetters in a lot of ways for the tag team division. The moves like the Midnight Express, they created some crazy tag team moves, and that's why they advanced in this one. All right, then comes a match that me and Ref really talked about this before we came on air, because based on the winner of this match, it could have went either way. We've got the New Japan team of Holy Demon Army versus Beer Money Inc., which was Bobby Roode and James Storm. I had a lot of people say, well, why did you do Beer Money? America's Most Wanted was better. Well, that's not true in a lot of ways. Beer Money had longer run together. They did a lot more with what they had. America's Most Wanted was a great tag team, don't get me wrong, but based on who Beer Money faced and who America's Most Wanted faced, this is who we had as the winner. Beer Money gets a slim win over Holy Demon Army. Riff, what was your thoughts?
Yeah, I was always a big fan of America's Most Wanted, but I look at it from, James Storm, was in both tag teams, so you're left with the other guy. To me, Bobby Roode was a better wrestler than Chris Harris.
Yep.
So for that reason, I would pick Beer Money over Most Wanted, even though they were both, great tag teams. But on this one, I again use my booking mentality of, unfortunately, even though the Demon Army is a phenomenal tag team.
Yes.
They're not WWE. They're not AEW. They're not TNA. So most people don't know who they are. So if you're having some kind of a tag team, qualification tournament, and they're in it, most people are going to say, well, who are they? So they're not going to come watch them because they don't know who they are, whereas everybody knows who Beer Money was. So I picked Beer Money.
All right, folks. So now, next, in 2 weeks, I keep going next, Ref. I got to get that out of my head. In 2 weeks, we'll have the Rock and Roll Express versus Beer Money to see who will move on in the tournament. Now we get down to the final 2 matches, Ref. The second that this match was put together, I was like, man, this could be interesting. In Ref, we have our first upset. in a lot of people's minds, this would be considered an upset. I don't think so. If you ever watched any old Mid-Atlantic, old WWE, especially WWE, you would see these two guys and you would understand why they get the win. We had the Dudley Boys versus the Blackjacks. And Ref Brandon, the 7 seed Blackjacks beat the Dudley Boys. What's your thoughts on this? I think the Dudley Boys are turning over and going, what the heck? How did they beat us? Are you kidding me?
See, to me, I wouldn't call it an upset. I guess you look at it as, the Dudley Boys won all those tag team belts across different promotions, but the Blackjacks were an old school tag team, and the Dudley Boys, they won almost all their matches using tables. I mean, that was their thing. That was their gimmick. And if the Blackjacks wrestle Dudley Boys, there ain't going to be no tables involved. So it's going to have to be just a regular, basic wrestling match. And I think the Blackjacks would out wrestle the Dudley Boys all day long.
And folks, just to let you know, just because the Dudley Boys would bring a table out, the Blackjacks were known for having bull rope with a bell on it, and they would ring you and clock your head and bust you open in a heartbeat. Blackjack Mulligan and Blackjack Lanza were evil and mean. They wasn't known as a goody good two shoes team, and they would just power you over, and that's why in this match they got the win.
You said that, Jay, and it got me to thinking. I'm going to go off on a rabbit trail about that. Shows you how much wrestling has changed over the years. You talk about the Blackjacks using their weapons, and they got booed out of the building. And then the Dudley Boys used a weapon, and they got cheered like crazy. Back in the day, when if you cheated, any kind of way it off, you cheated, you were hated. But nowadays, there's so many guys that cheat and use weapons, and they get cheered for it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is because of K-Fab is gone. Back then there was K-Fab. Now it's everybody kind of knows. Thanks to WWE, everybody knows the tricks, and I think that's what killed a lot of wrestling for the longest time. But it's making its way back thanks to a lot of different things. But ref, final match, and this one was beautiful. This match lasted 43 minutes and had so many near falls. We're talking about the Motor City Machine Guns. Shelly had just a phenomenal match, but in the end, it was Edge and Christian getting the win over the Motor City Machine Guns to move on.
Yeah, it was another hard one for me because when those guys were in their prime, it's hard to believe that all four guys are still doing it, but when those four guys were in their prime, you're talking about two exceptional tag teams. But Edge and Christian were just fun to watch, exciting to watch, and they were a tag team that everybody in the crowd reacted to them. Either you loved them or you loved to hate them.
Yep.
So from that perspective, that's why I went with Edge and Christian.
All right, so in 2 weeks, folks, here is who we have. We have the Road Warriors taking on the Outsiders, the Hardys taking on the Freebirds, Rock and Roll Express taking on Beer Money, the Blackjacks taking on Edge and Christian, the Usos taking on the Hurt Business, the Steiners taking on the Hart Foundation, the Midnight Express taking on the British Bulldogs, and the Lucha Brothers taking on Demolition. Boy, Ref, that tells me we're going to have a lot of fun with people this week giving us their thoughts.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you might need more than 2 weeks to, sit back and think about it, because you're talking about, just 16 phenomenal tag teams. And, the further you go, the harder it's going to get. But you can't you could, but you don't want to just sit down and just say, well, I picked this team. You want to actually, be logical about it, put some thought into it. And no matter what you do, you're going to be wrong, because you don't want to see anybody get beat, but somebody has to.
Exactly. Somebody has to go down. All right, Ref, before we get out of here, we're going to go over the top 64 male singles that's going to be in the OWN tournament pretty soon. Now, folks, I told you 68. Well, that's because Ref Brandon is working hard on the wild card entries. He will be working on the wild card entries. So, Ref, are you ready for me to give you the names of the 4 brackets of the men's tournament?
Yeah, let's hear them.
All right. Bracket 1 will have the Nature Boy Ric Flair, Sting, Randy Savage, Sid Vicious, Shawn Michaels, Kurt Angle, Brock Lesnar, Daniel Bryan, Christian Cage, Roddy Piper, Harley Race, Goldberg, Rick Rude, Nick Botwinkle, Owen Hart, and Jeff Jarrett. What's your thoughts on that bracket on its own, Riff?
Yeah, I should have wrote those names down because it sounded like just an absolutely fantastic list of amazing wrestlers all piled together.
Yeah, I mean, and folks, this is what we had to go through. I mean, it was hard not wanting to put as many wrestlers on here as possible, but we can't. I mean, we could do wrestlers for 2 years and do this. Now, Ref, this next bracket is what I call the big boys bracket. And when I say big boys, wait till you hear the names. First of all, this is the Andre the Giant bracket. Hulk Hogan, Rick Steamboat, Big Van Vader, Arn Anderson, Y2J, Mick Foley, Edge, Eddie Guerrero, Kane, Batista, Kevin Nash, Ultimate Warrior, Vern Gagne, Big Show, and Stan the Lariat Henson.
Yeah, just to show you how hard this is, the other day before you and I sat down and, started our actual brackets, I just got a piece of paper out and just started off the top of my head thinking about all the different organizations over the last 50 years and just started writing down names. And I think I wrote down 110 names that I thought of in about 10 minutes. And then I went back and actually sat and started thinking. I was like, man, I forgot this guy. I forgot this guy. I forgot this guy. But I was just writing down names as they come to me. And when you think about all the different organizations over the last 50 years, and you want to include everybody and not leave somebody out just because they weren't in AEW or WWE, and it's impossible to write down everybody's name. And I wrote down, I think, 110 in about 10 minutes.
Yep. I mean, and I actually started with 350 names from 1974 till now. There's 350 top names, and we had to get it down to 64. And yes, when we say we're adding 68, the other 4 will be independent superstars that Ref Brandon is going through, and that's hard because there's a lot of independent stars that deserve to be in this too. And we wanted to make sure they had a chance, so they will be in the play-in bracket. So, Ref, you ready for bracket number 3?
Yeah.
I call this the excitement bracket. The Rock, Bret Hart, Magnum TA. Now, folks, when I say this next name, understand this is wrestling, not what he did. Chris Benoit, John Cena, Triple H, CM Punk, Mr. Perfect, Scott Hall, AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, Lex Luger, Dr. Death Steve Williams, MJF, and he barely made it, Jeff Hardy, and Butch Reed. What's your thoughts on this one, Ref?
There's a bunch of guys in that bracket that I would just sit back and just watch wrestle all day long, whether it's the Rock entertainment side or whether it's the Samoa Joe, AJ Styles wrestling side. That's a lot of guys that are just exciting to watch.
Yep. All right. And now we got our final, the bracket. Stone Cold Steve Austin, Roman Reigns, Dusty Rhodes, Barry Windham, The Undertaker, Rey Mysterio, Randy Orton, RVD, Wahoo McDaniel, Booker T, Superstar Billy Graham, Bob Backlund, Ted DiBiase, Ron Simmons, Ronnie Garvin and Kerry Von Erich runs out the end of the men's tournament. What's your thoughts, Ref?
Man, we left off Gilbert and Funaki.
And folks, I mean, we'll start that bracket once we get everything, but we wanted to give you go ahead and give you a heads up on who all's going to be on it. And trust me, there's names that we could have took out and put back in. And you know what? We might do this again and put guys that did not get in this bracket, this particular tournament. But when we was doing it, it kind of went that way. Somebody asked me, well, because I actually told one of my friends about the brackets. He was like, the big boys bracket, why didn't you throw the Undertaker in there and Sid Vicious and get them out of the other ones? I was like, you got to have some big boys in some of the other brackets. You can't have them all in one. But this way you have guys facing each other that, you know, a Hogan versus Andre, or, you know, Vader versus Kevin Nash, or something to that aspect. We wanted to give everybody a chance to see those big boys against other big boys, and then see if they can handle some of the other guys. And, you know, Ref, I mean, this is going to be a fun tournament when we get to the men's singles match.
Yeah, it is. It's going to be fun, but it's also going to require a lot of, you know, thinking, because it's not like the tag team tournament where you're picking guys that work as a tag team. When it comes down to singles wrestlers, you're all by yourself. So it's, you know, what can one guy do versus what the other guy can do.
And the singles matches will also be done with no managers at ringside. It will be, if it was just at a house show or someplace like that, and we're talking about Ric Flair in his prime versus a MJF or whoever. It would be all of the players in their prime. And I know a lot of people have asked me, you know, why not so-and-so? How's MJF in there? MJF made it in there other than Cody Rhodes. It was down to them two, and I picked MJF over Cody Rhodes. I ain't gonna lie about it. I don't think Cody is better than MJF. I think MJF, even though he has not been as long as Cody Rhodes, that was just my thoughts. Ref, what's your thoughts on that? You tell me what you think, Ref. Do you think we should put Cody Rhodes in or leave it at MJF?
Well, it's kind of like with, you know, you and I talked about, you know, the women in the tag teams. You know, you're going to leave somebody out. So if you want to put Cody in there, if you want to keep MJF in there as well, then you've got to think, who else would you know, take out? From a booking perspective, you know, it makes sense to have Cody in there because of the fact he's so popular. But if you're talking about from a wrestling perspective, there are several guys that I would consider either as good or better wrestlers than Cody. But at the same time, putting Cody in there, who are you going to leave off?
Yep. And someone else told me, well, why isn't Gunther in there? And I said, Gunther hasn't been in long enough. He's only been really going for what, 4 years now? Am I correct on that?
Yeah, as far as what people know, because he wrestled for so many years over in Austria, but most folks ain't going to know about that. They're only going to know what he's done, you know, over here.
Yeah. Because, I mean, they was saying, you know, Gunther should get in over a Batista or, you know, a Stan Hansen. I'm like, you've never seen Stan Hansen. Stan the Lariat Hansen was vicious.
And I'm glad you said no managers, because the Alpha Balls, when she manages, she thinks she's got to get involved in every match.
Yeah.
So at least this way she knows that when these singles matches are happening, she knows she can't use a managerial mindset, because she thinks if she's out there, she's got to be involved.
But, you know, we really can't tell the Alpha Boss what to do, Ref. So she could actually pick any wrestler on this thing and be the manager, and we couldn't say a thing about it.
Yeah, I like that. She's not involved in this.
No, she's not involved in this.
I wrote all the names down, and I tried to get her perspective, point of view, and she didn't want to help me, so she ain't involved in this.
I ain't telling the Alpha Boss nothing, Ref. I'm sorry.
When we get down to the Final Four and we go to Orangeburg and Grill, she ain't even invited. She got to stay home.
Oh, I'm not saying that. No. I got a feeling you might get a chair over the head.
She wants to talk about them chicken and waffles, so she ain't invited. She's gonna stay home that night.
All right, folks. Well, we want to thank you for joining us on a live version. We're going to start trying to do this more, a live version of Rasslin and Racin, brought to you by Arden's Burger Grill in Central South Carolina, where we'll be having the Final Four for all three. We will have the women's and the tag team, of course, earlier, and then we'll do the men's on a different date. And we are looking forward to that. We're looking forward to finding out who's going to win this. Make sure you go to Ref Brandon and the Todd family YouTube. Vote, vote, vote. Your votes were pivotal in the women's, which we will have next week, and your votes were pivotal in the men's too. Remember, we use a lot of different things to try to grade this to see who would win, and we appreciate you joining us. I know Ref Brandon does. Appreciate you going to his YouTube, watch it. He loves people to interact with him. Make sure you go in there, subscribe, make sure you give a like, and just leave. Hey, man, I want Hogan to go all the way. Or, give us who you got going in the next round of the tag team. You still have one more week to get in your women's thoughts, because we did the tag team this week. Get your women in, and then you do the tag team this week and the following week, because next week we're just doing the women, not the tag team. So you'll find out the tag teams the following week. So we're doing everything we do to get down to the Final Four. The Final Four. Once we get to the Final Four in the women and the tag, we will have an Arden's Burger and Grill night, and we will be inviting all of you out. You can come to it. And then we're going to also have a Final Four for the men, and that will be more towards Christmas. By the way, we're doing it right now because we got football coming up, basketball, a lot of different things that me and Ref Brandon will be covering. So we're going to try to get through this as much and as fast as possible. And we just want to thank you for watching Rasslin and Racin, being with us. I want to thank the ones that came on, said hello. And let us know what we could do better. We'd like to listen to you. We want your thoughts, whether you agreed or disagreed with who we picked this week, who was, came up and why. Let us know. We would like to hear that. Make sure you go to Ref Brandon Todd family, and also go out and support professional wrestling in your area. These independent stars need your love and support. Make sure you go out, go to as many of these Comic Cons, go to as many of the independent wrestling shows. All these have great sports entertainment value. Family shows where you could take your kids and not have to mortgage your house. Because, I don't know if anybody's been to a Raw or SmackDown. They're wanting close to $300 for ringside seats, when you can go see top stars at independent shows like Southern Fried and SWA and all the other ones that Ref Brandon and his lovely wife is a part of. You can go see those ringside for how much, Ref?
SWA usually is $5. This Saturday, one of the big shows, it's 10, but usually it's 5. Southern Fried is 15. Total Aggression Wrestling is $10. Scrappy, where we had over 600 this past Saturday, it's $10.
There you go.
$10 to $15.
Yeah, $10 to $15, and some 5. Folks, you can barely go out to eat for that now. I know going to get a Happy Meal, folks, is close to $10. So you can go to see professional wrestling and then get a hot dog and all that there and still be saving money. So go out, support professional wrestling. You will not go wrong, and you will definitely help those that are trying to make it to AEW, WWE, or some of the stars from WWE, AEW, TNA that are coming down and supporting independent wrestling, because they like to stay busy. They like to interact with the fans. You need to do that. Make sure you support. We appreciate you. Make sure you go out and support Ref Brandon's YouTube. That's Ref Brandon the Todd family. And make sure you leave a message to the boss. You are coming to Arden's. That way, Ref ain't got a choice. He's got to listen to the fans. If the fans say the boss comes to Arden's, guess what? The boss is coming to Arden's.
She's taking a night off that night.
No, mercy. Ooh, the only way I see that happen is if you're bringing home 3 orders of chicken and waffles to the boss.
Yeah, she went one time and got chicken and waffles. And she loved them things.
Yep, and I'm getting my s'mores French toast. Oh, mercy. Or some boneless wings. Oh, mercy. Or that Paladin burger. Oh, mercy. I'm losing thought here, Ref. I forgot we're doing a wrestling show. Anyway, we want to thank you for joining us here on Rasslin and Racin, brought to you by Dorsey Auto Sales, Nashville, South Carolina. Also, Artinsburg and Grill in Central South Carolina, Pepsi Cola, Upstate Physical Therapy, Sitting Pretty Dog Grooming, and all of our friends over at Greenville Sports Media who bring us and we're powered by. Thank you, Greenville Sports Media. This has been Rasslin and Racin, brought to you by all of the above. Thanks for joining us, folks. So long, everybody.